Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this year's National Landscape Awards workshop. We're delighted to have you join us here today on this virtual platform. And just bear with me, I know there's still a few people that are waiting to join, so I may have to pause momentarily just to let them in as they do. But for those of you that I haven't met with or spoken to before, my name's Emily Feeney and I'm the Events Project Manager here at BALI. I'm responsible for the National Landscape Awards and I'll be presenting today alongside Chair of the Judging Panel, John Melmoe, who you will see up on screen now. And in all honesty, he will be doing most of the presenting for us here. So this workshop has been developed by the judges to provide you with an insight into the whole judging process, as well as hints and tips on how to create a successful entry. But before we get started, I just wanted to take you through a couple of points. So the workshop today is being recorded. We're doing that so that people, because I know there's quite a few that aren't able to make it today, so that they can view it on demand. So, and there's a Q&A session that we'll have at the end of the workshop. You're also more than welcome to ask questions as we run through the presentation today. So you'll see that there's a Q&A box on the screen. So as and when you have any questions, feel free to type them in there. And when it's appropriate, I'll just put those questions to John. So now that we've got the housekeeping part covered, we can move on to today's agenda. So I'll be taking you through a short introduction to the awards, why entering is important to you and your company, and also how to enter. At which point I'll then pass over to John, and he's going to cover what you should be including within your submission pack, the judging criteria and score reports for each category, and some simple steps to follow when submitting your entry, with some hints and tips to ensure that your photography and videos are all top-notch. So to provide a short introduction for those who may not be aware, the National Landscape Awards provides the industry with a platform in which to showcase and improve their business and celebrate achievements both within and outside of the industry. It's now in its 48th year, and the awards started from very humble beginnings and have grown not only in the number of entries and attendees, but also the stature within the industry. This is no small part thanks really to the commitment of our members, and it's now recognised as the largest landscaping awards in Europe. This growth has seen the introduction of new categories and categories that we feel represent the whole of the landscaping industry, but most importantly represent our membership base. These categories are also reviewed each year to ensure that they stay relevant and changes are made when necessary. We do always take your feedback on board, so any feedback that you do have, feel free to send through to me and we can review it for upcoming awards years. Now, this growth also means that winning a National Landscape Award promises to bring change to the way you and your business are seen within the industry. So members continue to enter because they find a benefit in doing so. So whether that's increased promotion or simply a way of celebrating the wonderful work you and your staff achieve. So the big question really is why enter the awards? So the entry process, it does take thought and consideration, it takes time, and of course it does take a little bit of money as well. But the benefits definitely outweigh this. So first and foremost, it showcases and highlights your commitment to excellence, not just within the industry, but to the general public and your clients as well. So one of the biggest surprises that I had when I first started working on the awards, and even now to this day, is the hunger I see from members to gain feedback from industry peers. So whether that's the judges visiting or reviewing their schemes and entries, or from other members who see their winning entries up on the big screen at the ceremony. And from that, I see their commitment to ensure that they're always learning, always moving forward, always pushing themselves and their teams to do more. And in turn, the engagement of staff within the business also increases. And I know John will make reference to this during his presentation as well. Lots of winners have also reported, you'll be pleased to hear, an increase in inquiries after winning an award. But one statistic I heard and thought was pretty amazing was that a member saw an increase of 24% in their inquiries. And to me, it just highlights one of the great benefits of entering. Now, of course, winning an award also generates many additional promotional opportunities for you and your company. and we work with our winners to try and ensure we gain as much coverage within the industry as possible. You'll see on screen there, we've got a number of examples for you. I'll just leave that there for a second. So now I'd just like to talk you through how to enter. Now, the entry process, I like to think, is a fairly simple one, but firstly, it's really important to ensure that you've reviewed and checked your eligibility against the entry guidelines document. These guideline documents can be found on the awards website. You'll see them linked throughout the website, and if you get in contact with me, I can always send you a direct link for them as well. They tend to be on all the promotional material we put out there, so they should be fairly easy to find. But once you've done that, you're ready to start your entry. A link taking you through to the entry system is on the home page of the awards website, and also in each category section. So you'll be asked to register on the entry system. Those of you who have entered in previous years, you won't need to re-register. You'll just log in using the credentials that you've had before. And once you're done, you can then make a start on your entry. So you can easily pick the category and it'll take you through the entry questions in stages. But a top tip for you is to collate all the information you need prior to starting that online entry. Now you can download the entry questions from the entry page, so you know what information to collate. Again, if you get stuck on that, just feel free to get in touch and I can send those directly through to you. And the final section of the online entry system is for your digital submission pack. It's really important to ensure that all the items that are detailed in the entry guideline document are included within that submission pack. Again, John will run through what they are. And it's really important that that's uploaded as one PDF document. This is so that when the judges are out on site, they can easily review the information that you've provided for them. And when they're reviewing it, if it's one of the desktop reviews, they can easily just flick through the information. Then images should also be uploaded as a separate zipped file, so all together in one file and uploaded onto the site. Finally, it's just then a case of submitting your entry. So payment for the entry can either be made through the entry system or you can request an invoice. If you're entering more than one entry, you can choose to either submit and pay for all your entries together, or you can do one at a time, whatever works best for you. And as always, if you've got any questions throughout the process, it's really important to know that you can reach out at any time. I'm available by phone or by email, and I'll be happy to help. So we're now moving on to talk more in depth about the requirements for each category. And for that, I'm pleased to introduce John Melmoe, Chair of the Judging Panel, who will take over from here from me. Oh, John, sorry, you've not got your mic on.
There, I'll try again. Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me. I welcome you to this webinar, and basically to assist you and give you some guidance on how to enter and what the judges are looking for. It's important to emphasize that you need to make your presentation different. It needs to jump out the page and capture the judge's imagination. And this is vitally important. The presentation pack is often undernoted and understated by the members, and yet it's a vital starting point. So there's a list can be found in the guidelines of what you need to do: evidence of practical completion, detailed specification, evidence of hidden works, and this is often overlooked. A lot of our works are hidden, they're buried, and so you need to build the picture for the judges so that they can understand all the effort that you have gone into to build your project. Clearly define other works that have been undertaken by third parties. Don't try and steal, boundary images of works carried out by others. It will always find you out. All the schemes are visited, and this is important. Everyone, no matter how large or small, is visited by a judge. Clean copies of relevant drawings. Don't go putting in drawings just to pad out their pack. It's relevant drawings that are needed. Financial summary or bill of quantity, copy of invoices, just to demonstrate the value of the scheme, and as a cross-check that it's sitting in the right category. A minimum of 5 representative high-resolution landscape images. This is vitally important. If you can afford it, engage a professional photographer. If you can't, just take some time and capture the images correctly. Crop them, edit them, etc., but don't enhance them. They must be representative of your works on site. And then a minimum of 1 high-resolution portrait image of the completed works. Before and during images help build the picture for the judging team. And then vitally important is a clear location and access details. The judges are on a tight time frame and they need to make sure that they get to the right scheme or the right meeting point easily. So make sure that there's clear access details and clear location details of where to meet. If the security passes are needed, then make sure that these are done in advance and there's no waiting around or minimal waiting around when the judges arrive on your scheme. Next slide, Emily, please. Right, the quality of the information is both the online entry and the submission pack. It's the interpretation of the client's brief, explain the complexity of your projects, the quality of the workmanship, choice and use of materials, and the success in overcoming major problems. These all sound fairly obvious, but emphasize these points in your submission. And it's best sitting down before you actually start compiling your submission and just create a timeline, a program for producing your submission. If there's going to be multiple people involved, then make sure their tasks are clearly assigned and that they understand and respect the deadlines that you set the team. And it's often far more beneficial to engage a team from site right the way through to office staff, etc. Try and make it inclusive for the entire team that worked or had some involvement on the project. It comes across far better in the submission pack. A pack that's done by a business development manager solely on their own is lifeless often, and it's breathed some life into your presentation and engage the company, no matter how large or small it is, but bring everyone together and get behind the scheme. The success in overcoming major challenges, explain these clearly in your submission pack. Client satisfaction, if the client's delighted, say so, you know, this will be taken into account. If he's dissatisfied, then you might want to question why you're entering. Good use of innovation or technology. There's some fantastic examples out there available in the marketplace, often overlooked because contractors use these on a regular basis, but emphasize the new innovations that you've used or new technology that you've used in your projects. And then the environmental impact, you know, emphasize any recycling of materials, etc., and any elements of the scheme that have gone that extra mile to minimize the environmental impact. Strong design and implementation, obviously, if this is in a design category, that's paramount, but equally in the general contracting world, a strong design assists the presentation. Next slide, Emily, please. Thank you. This is typical of a crib sheet that the judges use when they come to site. The quality of the entry material, that's your submission pack. Quality of materials, quality of workmanship, etc. And the rest of them I'll lead you read through those elements. The judge's crib sheet, this is purely an aid memoir to them whilst they're on site. these scores are not taken into account by the entire judging panel. We'll talk through the judging process later, but at the moment this gives you just a feel for how the judge on his day, the day of his visit, will actually just use this crib sheet from 1 to 10 just to give him a basic outline of the project. Next slide, Emily, please. And what to include in your submission pack. A full list of this is in the entry guidelines, but there's actually just a number of them. If you printed out this slide or printed out the entry guidelines, use it as a crib sheet to make sure that your final submission encompasses all of these elements. Often people say, well, you know, we didn't put evidence of practical completion in and we didn't think it was relevant. It's asked for it. It's a criteria of entering. So please just use this crib sheet or use the entry guidelines as a cross-check against your final submission. And again, I won't run through all these items because they become a little bit repetitive, but we will give you some examples going forward if you're not familiar with the likes of practical completion or what that means for you if you're a domestic contractor. Design excellence will require a different approach. Still, a number of the functions are the same, but here you're actually, need to exacerbate some of the elements. Spatial design, for instance, the design, planting design and composition. The looking at the site conditions, the consideration, why the plants were chosen, etc., etc. And likewise on hard landscaping, it's ensuring that the designer has understood the materials and applied them appropriately to the scheme, and then emphasize that within your submission. Attention to details, often overlooked, but it is the final detail which actually matters often in these submissions. The quality of the pointing, the quality of the style of brickwork, etc., etc. And then the design, the appropriateness to the site, etc., and documentation, scaled and detailed CAD drawings, topographical surveys. All these elements are needed for the team to appreciate the design excellence and what work and thought process has gone into it. Then the scope of the works and specification, bills of quantities, etc., building the picture for the judging team. Additional documentation can be submitted and should be submitted. If you've engaged specialists, sub-consultants on the scheme, then give them credit and actually show this to the judging team. Structural engineers, lighting designers, drainage, etc., etc. Build the picture really for the design team. Next slide, Emily, please. So there's approximately 9, maybe 10 simple steps to complete the submission pack. Introduction, explain the project, gives a little bit of history to the background of the project. Don't go into massive pages and pages of detail about it, but give an oversight. The judges don't know necessarily about your project. Give them the background, the history of it, and set the scene for them. Evidence of practical completion. Practical completion, when the scheme is practically complete, it doesn't mean that it's finally complete. It means it's practically complete. So for all intents and purposes, it could be open to the public, fit for purpose, safe, etc., or it's been practically complete on a domestic scheme where it's handed back to the client and they got use of the garden or the project. Detailed specification. In some instances, this can be very detailed. In others, it can be basically your quotation often on a domestic situation, but give the detail. What have you been engaged to do and the specifications that you are working to. Evidence of hidden work. We've mentioned this before, but it is important. Give the whole picture, not just the finished article, to the judging team. Let them see the grief and that you've gone through to get to the end product. Clearly define your works undertaken by third parties. If necessary, do a red line drawing showing the boundaries of your work, if it abuts another contractor or another scheme, if it's a phased elements of a larger project. Clearly define what has been undertaken by your company. Clean copies of relevant drawings, not pages and pages of drawings, but the relevant drawings. It may be half a dozen, you may need to go to a dozen or 2 dozen, but not hundreds and hundreds of drawings. They just become, the judges just get drowned in that sort of level of information. Financial summary or bill of quantities, these could be invoices in a domestic situation, but let the judging team be aware of the value of the overall project and evidence it. Images, mention these, and we will go on and on about these. The higher the quality of the resolution, and these images are the ones that go forward onto the screen at the Grosvenor House if you're fortunate enough to get there, but they're also used in the promotional works as well. So quality of images, I cannot express this enough. And then again, clear location and access details. Don't keep the judges hanging around. Next slide, Emily. Now we'll walk you through the examples step by step here, and thanks go to Willoughby Landscapes for allowing us to use one of their submissions from a few years back. This doesn't mean that this is the only way that you can present it. It just gives an illustration of a well thought through document. And it does take time, it does take effort, and it does take money. But if you format the presentation correctly, the entry correctly for the BALI Award, you can use this information for promoting to other clients. It doesn't have to be a completely bespoke document for BALI. If you structure it correctly, you can use it time after time for other purposes. So here we have an introduction. It shows the scheme, it gives you a brief breakdown of it, etc. And then we go on to the next slide.
Before we move on, John, we've just had a question come in. So this is somebody who is looking to enter the joint category, the joint contractor and designer category. And they're asking, should they be doing a joint presentation, or should it be one design presentation and then a construction presentation?
No, it should be a joint presentation. You're entering it jointly, but obviously you emphasize in your presentation document who's responsible for the design and the design element, what the design brief was. So you capture the points, but equally the contractor will then need to be building the profile and the picture of all the hidden works, etc., that have gone into it. So do it as a joint collaboration. There will be obviously some overlap in design responsibility, etc., but put it in as one document.
Yeah, I think it's also important to mention with that category as well, with all of the submission packs, it's about telling a story, but in particular, in addition with that category, it's about the relationship that you and the designer have together. The judges want to hear about how well you've worked together, you know, why the client picked you two to team up, and how that relationship improved the overall project and the end result, I guess. But I'll leave you to crack on, John. I'll move to the next slide.
Okay, on big schemes, it is often detailed in the contract that a certificate of practical completion is actually drafted and given. This is a very formal one, but a practical completion can be your final invoice or your final account to the client. It could be a letter just handing over the garden to the client and hoping that they enjoy it for many years to come, etc. It's proof of the date that you finished the works. Practically finished them. Doesn't mean that all the snagging's done, it doesn't mean the dead plants have been replaced, etc., etc. It means that it is practically complete and therefore can be handed to the client for use by the client. So that's what we're looking for the practical completion, a date that we can tie back that the works was substantially complete. That's what we need to demonstrate. Next slide, please, Emily. So detailed specification, here we are, MBS specification. This is again a very formal one, and it's got, you know, umpteen pages of relevant information. And in this instance, it's easy to submit, but sometimes the specification, as I've said previously, could be your quotation to the client, outlining the scope of works that they are contracting you to undertake, and the standards that you will be doing the work to. If you are working to a British standard, then state this in your specification or your quotation. And obviously in the MBS, it cross-references the relevant British standards, or the standards that the client or the architect is wanting you to work to and achieve. Next slide, Emily, please. So hidden works, you know, don't go and make, if there weren't any hidden works, then clearly it's not relevant. But often where there are complex hidden works that people cannot appreciate because you've covered them up, in this instance, massive embankments of polystyrene, scaffolding required for certain sections, elevators required, you know, clearly indicating a complex scheme, spider cranes, etc., etc. Now, it starts to explain that how the client accepted how the contractor accepted the site, and it's equally none of these elements were visible when the judging team go to site because they've been buried. So build the picture, let the judging team and the judge who's judging your scheme have all the information. Next slide, please, Emily.
Just got one other question that's come in, and this is about maintenance categories in particular. So if a project's been taken over from another contractor, another project, would a start date be acceptable rather than a practical completion date? And I think it's important to note on the maintenance categories, the practical completion element is slightly different. So with the maintenance categories, you need to have held that contract for a minimum of 2 years. So regardless of when the practical completion date was, that project could have been completed 20 years ago. What the judges ask for and what the requirements are is that the company that is entering has held the project for a minimum of 2 years. John, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, I mean, in that instance, a maintenance scheme doesn't have a practical completion date. You're absolutely right, but it has a start date. And that's what we need to demonstrate, is the date that you took the scheme over. And as Emily's stated in the entry guidelines, that's a 2-year window you have to have held that contract for. And therefore you need to demonstrate that as the start date in the maintenance category, rather than practical completion. That's the start date.
Thank you.
Okay, clearly define the works undertaken. Here we have an image, and it's not obvious what works are undertaken. Clearly the structure was done by the main contractor, but the stairs on the left-hand side of the image, were they done by the contractor? Well, in this instance, no, they weren't. And this was clearly defined in the submission pack. The landings, which were some of the hard landscape, were done by the contractor. So you need to make sure that it is absolutely crystal clear what elements are undertaken by the contractor, and the submission pack therefore needs to reflect that. We don't want any blurred edges. We want clear understanding and definition of the works that you were contracted to do. Next slide, Emily, please. Clean copies of relevant drawings. Don't pad the document out. It becomes an irrelevance if you're not careful. But clean documents, planting plans, cross sections, everything that will enable the judging team and the judging panel to appreciate the extent of the works, the complexity of it, and equally assist in defining the elements that you were contracted to do. Next slide, Emily, please. Financial summary, these figures are all made up, but this is an indication of what would be acceptable. This is a summary of a bill of quantities rather than the whole, 50 pages of bills. This is a summary of it, and it clearly breaks it down in this instance into the various elements to see where the money was allocated. And again, this is a cross check that you are sitting in the right category and not in a category that you shouldn't be sitting in. So this is it. It could be, as I say, an invoice. It could be the full bill of quantities. It could be the financial summary. The information is treated strictly by the judges, and it's confidential. So, but be accurate with your figures. That's all I would ask. Next slide, Emily, please. Images. Can't emphasize enough the quality of the images. This is what needs to jump out of your pack, and it needs to be able to be put up on a large screen if necessary, and to be used in promotional works. Atmosphere, people, emphasize the work carried out by the contractor. Try and pick some beautiful images that actually stimulate the imagination. So clear access, I mentioned this, and this is often overlooked. If you've got a complex scheme and you have to get through security, then please organise passes in advance. If there's a meeting point that you want to meet at, because it's easier in this instance to get the judging panel to the high levels, the 34th, 35th floor of a building, then meet centrally at the base of it, and then make arrangements through security to get the judge swift access into the building. This could be just a simple fact that you are meeting in a private garden, but just make sure that the postcode that you've put in your submission pack is correct. This year, somebody put in an incorrect postcode, and took the judges 20 miles out of their way, all because the postcode was incorrect. So cross-check. Put in a map if necessary, a plan of where to meet, and then make sure that all arrangements have been made well in advance. Okay, next slide. Yeah.
Just on that point, sorry, not a question at this point, but just to make you all aware, this year we've introduced, or I've added to the online entry system, what 3 words field. So if you're not aware what it is, there's a website that you can pop in the address, and it gives you 3 words that take you within that very specific, I think it's kind of a square meter range of it. There's a link on the entry site to the website, so you can do that. So there's the option to add that in, which might just help narrow down that search a little bit more. And obviously the judges will contact you beforehand as well to discuss a meeting point. So if necessary, you can change that at a later date if you need to, if there's somewhere better or that you would prefer to meet them at. But that is something new for this year.
Okay, thank you, Emily, for that. Photographs, pick your beautiful images that truly reflect the nature of your scheme and the works involved. And as I said, if you can afford it, I would recommend getting a professional photographer in. With the cameras that these days, it's not always necessary to have the professional, but the professional has the eye. But if you aren't using a professional, then just take some time out and frame the shots correctly, and put some effort into getting the correct shots and the correct days. You may need to visit the sites on several different occasions to get the best images, but that's really your decision. And again, before and after images, before, during and after, even better. But it gives assistance to the judges to appreciate the journey that you've been through and your client's been through to actually get the scheme to the finished point. beautiful planting, emphasize it, and basically, frame your shots, choose the correct lighting, etc. And just take time in framing it and getting the right angles, etc. At all times, and give a sense that you're feeling in the garden, etc. Dress the schemes as necessary, and just basically present them to the best of your ability. And that now this is an example of engaging all the team. In this instance, it was the site guys who knew that the scheme was going in for award, decided to put a camera on the jib of a crane. And again, this was fed back into the office to be used as part of the presentation. If the guys on site and the girls on site aren't aware of the company putting in a scheme for presentation, they won't be able to use these types of images, etc., and video clips. This engages all the team. It buys that they all buy into the submission pack for the awards. Now the question is whether the hole in the roof is big enough to take this cycad. It's 200-year-old cycad. The guy's strapped in on the roof, suction pads on the feet, harnessed in. Will it fit? That's the question. I think they should have left another panel out. Thankfully, they measured it right. But the point here is, without the engagement of the site team, that clip that you've witnessed wouldn't have been, just wouldn't have existed. So the information was there. They were part of it, part of the team in putting the whole process together. So let's just say a little bit about drone footage and videos. Drone footage can be extremely useful, but it can also be very easily overused. If you're going to use drone footage, make sure the site is ready for filming. And that is, we had a lovely clip a year ago or two where a drone photographed up a garden, but the hose pipe that was watering the turf was left out on the lawn, and it ruined the shot. So just be careful on the drone footage that it's not overused and that it's relevant. But it can be used and can be used very effectively, etc. So again, just make sure that it's relevant and that it's being presented correctly. Permissions always for videos, drones, photographs, get the owners and clients permission before taking them. And if they need to be credited, make sure the awards team know about the credits that are needed. There's nothing worse than a professional photographer seeing his image up on the screen and not getting credited for it. So please make sure that the awards team know about any credits required. And that make sure the owner or client is happy for you to take photographs, or for the photographer to have access to the property, sometimes late in the day or early morning, etc. Just make sure that you've got the correct permissions in place. So again, we're repeating ourselves to a certain degree, but the entry guidelines are very clear. 2,000 word description of the products and services. This is for the supplier exceptional service. These points, it comes back to the crib sheet. If you make a list of these points, or the points that are highlighted in the entry guidelines, and make sure that you submit in accordance with these, then your submission pack is relevant. When the people submit without the necessary evidence of items or products is when they get marked down. So it's very important that you follow the guidelines and that you cover all the relevant aspects. There's not that many of them, but it's amazing how many people fail to give the sufficient evidence of client retention or testimonials, etc., etc. So I'll leave you with that description here, where this is the score sheet. For suppliers, exceptional services, etc. These are actually, unlike the main construction awards, these are actually are based upon a scoring system. And these are the items that are required in the submission pack. And these are the entry guidelines, and these are scored, and then basically 0 to 60, as you see at the top, is no award, 70 plus award, and then the highest score in the category takes the principal award. But it's very important, and it's often overlooked, that those key points there, the items there that are listed, are actually form part of your pack, and they're clearly evidenced and supported. Employer excellence is a similar state of affairs. Print out the entry guidelines and then check this as a crib sheet that your submission, before you upload it, actually covers the relevant points and it's evidenced. Employer excellence, exactly the same. Print out the entry guidelines and then evidence it. Time and time again, you know, recognition of service. How is the service recognised? You know, longevity of service, etc., etc. How is it done, and what do you do to recognise it? And again, just as before, the employer's excellent pack, these are actually scored, and again, there you have the scoring credits at the top, and the 70 plus award, and then the highest score out of the category takes the principal award. So I'd like to hand you back to Emily. If you've got any questions, I'll be gladly able to assist. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, John. Yes, we have had some questions come in, some additional questions. So I'll just pose those to you if that's all right, John, and we can get some feedback on those. So the first one is relating to a domestic contractor. So they're asking, as a small domestic contractor, how can I make my scheme stand out from others?
It comes down, the size of the scheme doesn't matter at all, and every scheme will be visited by the judging team, and no matter how large or small. How can you make it stand out from others? It comes back to following the presentation pack. Basically, if you put in a scruffy site soiled drawing, you put in blurred images, then clearly your presentation won't stand out. So work through the guidelines, but take some time out to actually prepare your submission and check the quality of your photographs. Check the relevance of the information that you are submitting, and if you follow those guidelines, then your scheme will stand out and shine on the day.
Thank you. And then another question I've had is, if I enter into a scheme into one category, can or will it be moved at a later date if needed?
Yes, one of the checks that the judges do, in addition to what Emily's does in the background, is the relevance of your submission into that category. This is vital, and if at the time Emily or others think that it should sit better in another category, it can be moved, and this might not become evident until the judge comes to site and actually views it with you for that category. And then in discussion, if they feel that you stand a better chance, or it's sitting inappropriately in the category that you submitted it in, they will advise you, and yes, it can be then moved into an alternative category with your agreement.
Yeah, I think it's good to know, because I know some people are nervous about what category fits their entry best. But rather than you submitting it into one category and it not being the right one, and us just then not awarding that entry, that's not the case at all. We would look for the category that's relevant and move it over to there, and then judge it alongside those criteria. So you're not missing out really on that entry. So there's a couple more questions. The next one is, what advice would you give to someone applying for the first time?
Oh, go for it. This is the cheapest form of advertising that you will ever come across. And no matter how small or large you are, just put your effort into it. There's no point entering a race unless you're going to win it. And that's what the thought process you should start with. I'm going to win this. I'm going to go up against some of the bigger schemes because my scheme is fantastic, and therefore get everybody into it. And if necessary, run your partner or run the project or your presentation through a third party for their opinion of it. Put the effort in and you will get the reward. Don't enter unless you're going to stand, but really get behind the scheme and push it to its utmost. As I say, the publicity that you would get for even entering was the cheapest form of advertising that you can come across.
And then the final one I've got, unless anybody has any more to add in, is, what can I expect on a site visit? Will I be asked any specific questions?
Yeah, the site visit, the judge will call you up and arrange a date that is suitable to you and your client. And this is important that the client is there. It's not essential, but it also gives this buy-in into this project. The judge will have gone through the information several days in advance before attending site, and they will be asking you some testing questions about the weather conditions, the challenges that you had, how you overcame design issues, etc., etc. And they will be probing. Some of the questions are quite direct. They never embarrass you in front of your client, and they would never do that at all. So don't feel that they're there to trip you up. They're not. They're there to interrogate you so that they understand your scheme. The judge then goes back, having done the site visit, and prepares a report. And then this report goes forward to an adjudication panel at the end of August each year. And it's the panel of judges who are from the industry, with a range of backgrounds, from designers through to contractors, through to maintenance people, etc. And they all pool their thoughts on your scheme. So the judge that visits presents your scheme, so therefore the information that you give him needs to be factual and accurate. Images, he may take some additional images on the day, undoubtedly, of good and bad points, and these are put forward to the panel, and it's debated, and the debates can be lively. But at the end of the process, their agreement has to be reached by the entire panel. So do your best, put your best foot forward, give the judging the information that they need, that they can sell your scheme to the panel.
Yeah, I've had to witness some of those lively debates before. They've got very interesting. And I think it's probably important to mention as well, on that note, that whoever is meeting with the judge on site, it's important that they've been to site before and know the scheme, know what they're talking about, because I know, John, you've mentioned in the past it's been very evident when you've had maybe someone from the marketing team meet the judge on site. If you want to just talk through that aspect of it.
Oh, it's essential. I mean, I mentioned about bringing the whole team together to prepare these awards or the entries for the awards. It's paramount. A business development manager, does a cracking job, or a marketing team does a cracking job, but they haven't lived the project as the site team have, or the office team, fielding all the phone calls from clients or main contractors, etc., etc. Bring the whole team together and make them part of your presentation. It may be one person that pulls it all together, but let there be many people that feed into it, and you won't end up with a sterile submission. And to attend site with somebody who has never been to site before actually is embarrassing. It's embarrassing for them, it's embarrassing for the client, and it's embarrassing for the judge. So make sure that the person that meets the judge has a background knowledge at the least of the scheme, and at the best that it's actually somebody, a project manager or site foreman or etc., that has actually been on site and been on the tools or overseen the works. They must have knowledge of the scheme. It's imperative in my view.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Now that's actually covered all the questions that we've got in. So I'd just like to thank everyone here today for taking the time to join us. I know I've enjoyed presenting the workshop. I hope John has as well. And the judges and myself are really looking forward to seeing those entries come in. A really huge thank you from me to John for taking the time to present today. Really do appreciate that. And as I said earlier, if any of you have any questions at all throughout the entry process, please do get in touch. I'll be absolutely happy to help. And just one final point to note from me, this year's ceremony is going to be taking place on the 6th of December at Grosvenor House in London. So pencil that date in your diary, because I know I'm probably not the only one who's looking forward to celebrating. But that's it from us. So please do take care, and we're looking forward to seeing your entries come in due course.